video is about how to write a review. It's for anyone who is inspired to write a review for any reason at all. Hi, I'm Talia Newland. I am the managing editor of AAA Publishing, and I have written thousands of reviews in my time. Back in 2012, I set up something called the Awesome Indies Book Awards and ran a whole bunch of people who wrote reviews of various different indie books. And I had to train our reviewers in how to write a review that really gave these authors a fair go. The Book Awards didn't judge books against other books, it judged books on the quality of the book. And when you are writing a review, that's what you want to do. You want to actually look at the book and go, well, what is it about this book that makes it good? What is it about this book that makes it not so good? Now, before we get into this, I think it's important to know that there are two kinds of reviews. There are what's called editorial reviews. Now, those are reviews written by people who know a bit about writing. They've studied writing, they may be writers themselves, or they might be people with a book review blog who've just really looked into it. So they know what they're talking about when they talk about things like point of view, deep characterization, world building, and so on. And then there are just ordinary reader reviews. Now, as an ordinary reader, you don't need to know anything about books apart from what you like and what you don't like. Because an ordinary reader review is just entirely that. It's you saying whether you like the book or not. But in that kind of review, what's important is that you say what you liked about it and what you didn't like about it and why. Because you're writing the review for other readers. You also might be wanting to give some feedback to the author. But essentially, other readers are going to look at your reviews and go, is this the book that I want to read or not? So if, for instance, you say you don't like the language, that's not particularly helpful. But if you say you don't like all the swear words, then someone who doesn't like swear words is going to go, oh, right, okay, no, I don't like that at all. So being specific is really, really helpful. Reviews are really important for authors because they provide social proof of the quality of their work. And if their work is not up to standard, then they provide social proof of that as well. I've started out in the publishing industry as an author, and then I became an editor and a publisher myself. So I really do feel for the authors, and I think it's important that anyone who's reviewing has a certain amount of empathy for the author and understands that they have spent an enormous amount of time writing their book. And hopefully they've also invested in, editing and a proper publisher and all of that kind of stuff as well. But sometimes when that doesn't happen, it's because the authors doesn't know things that they should know. So even if we're saying something negative about their book, I think it's really good to try and be gentle. Some people say if you can't say something good about a book, don't say anything at all. And I totally understand that. That is the approach I take on this channel because I just want to encourage people who write great stuff. But for ordinary readers, it's important that you do say what you think, because otherwise it's like you get this false idea and you can see a book that's got all these wonderful reviews and actually it's not a very good book because the people who thought it was a terrible book didn't leave a review. So it is really important to leave reviews. And you don't have to be really knowledgeable to write an I like it or I don't like it review. And it doesn't have to be a great full-blown kind of thing. It just does need to be written in such a way that somebody can just read it and they can get an idea of whether you liked it or not and why. So you say the things that you enjoyed about it, the things that you didn't enjoy about it. And those things, the aim of you writing that is to help other people to decide whether this is a book that they want to write or not. The other kind of review is more a review of craftsmanship rather than personal likes and dislikes. And this is the kind of a review that if you need to write a review for class, or if you've got a book blog and you want to be giving people something of a bit more substance, or if you're a professional reviewer writing for one of the big editorial review places, then you do need to know about books. And what you need to know about is plot, pacing, structure, characterization, what makes for natural dialogue, world building, those kinds of basic things, because your primary analysis of a story are those story elements. So, for instance, with point of view, if you don't know about point of view, probably best you don't talk about it. But if you do notice that the point of view is jumping all over the place, so that in this paragraph here, somebody's talking and you're inside their head, and then in the next paragraph you're suddenly in somebody else's head, that's called head hopping, and it's very confusing, and it's also really bad form. So with point of view, it is good that you know a little bit about it, enough to be able to recognize when it's really not working. And head hopping doesn't mean that one chapter is in one character's point of view and another chapter is in someone else's point of view. That's fine. It's when it jumps all over the place, within paragraphs or within scenes, because it's best that you write one scene from one character's point of view. So if I'm the point of view character, then I'm describing what I see, and I can't know what is in somebody else's head. You can only know that if you're like a god, and that's the omniscient point of view, where the author writes as if they're outside the whole story and they know what's going on in everybody's head. But even then, there shouldn't be this sense that you're jumping around from one person's head to another. So you also need to know about plot basics. And plot basics are simply that there is a protagonist, the central character or characters, and they have to have an aim. There has to be something that drives them, something that they want in the story, something they're searching for, a mystery they have to solve, something like that. And then there has to be things that get in the way of them achieving their goals. And the things that get in the way of them achieving their goals are called antagonists. In a fantasy story, for instance, you have one big bad evil guy, and that's the obvious antagonist. In literary fiction, it might not be so clear. It might be things like the person's own lack of self-esteem. It might be the attitudes of people around that person. It could be all sorts of things. Just a relationship that's going awry that gets in the way of the central character, the protagonist, achieving their aims. And it's that conflict between what the main character wants and what the antagonist wants. Those things are at loggerheads with each other. It's that conflict that creates the tension that makes the reader want to carry on reading. And in a good book, no matter what style of book it is, that tension should build as it gets to the end of the book. The challenges for the central characters should just get bigger and bigger and bigger, so that there's lots of different things that they have to overcome before the story is tied up. Pacing is one of those things that has a personal opinion aspect to it anyway, because some people like really fast books, but I don't, because I like to have moments where I can take a breath and put the book down and turn off the light. And I like books to have a bit of time and space to go into the characterization more deeply than you do in the really, really fast books. So some people might find some books a bit slow, but other people might find them absolutely fine. And if a book is a bit slow, then you want the prose to be really well written. It needs to be such that just reading the words alone is gratifying enough that if there's not a lot happening beyond perhaps character development, it's still a very satisfying read. So authors who write really fast books actually don't have to be such good writers, believe it or not, for people to enjoy the books. It's not to say that they aren't as good writers, it's just that they don't have to be, because the readers is being held by the plot and the fast pace and the action in books like that. But also you've got to evaluate pacing in terms of the genre, right? So if it's a thriller, people expect it to be fast-paced, right? If it's literary fiction, people don't expect it to be so fast-paced. But even so, there is no excuse for a book that just drags. In terms of characterization, you want the characters to be three-dimensional and realistic. Now, realistically, we all have problems, right? We all have our weaknesses and our strengths. And so if you've got a character who's too perfect, they're bland. So look for too perfect characters. They're not so great. If you're finding it hard to relate to someone, it might be that they don't have any flaws. And you want the characters to be more than just names, more than just, sort of bodies floating around the story. You need to feel that you've really got to know those characters. Their dialogue should sound natural. They should talk the way people talk for the time period in the book. In terms of world building, that's really important in fantasy and science fiction, but it's also important in any book, because even if you're writing a contemporary fiction story set in the modern world, and we all know the parameters of that, there are still some aspects in terms of the concepts behind the book that need to be consistent. Okay, particularly, the concepts of the characters, the way they view the world. That has to be consistent throughout. And that's the important thing with the world building. It has to be consistent. So you can't, for instance, in a fantasy, have just one person be able to appear and disappear at will, and nobody else can, unless there's a jolly good reason for it, and that reason is explained. And you can't have somebody in a situation that they can't get out of that would have been solved if they'd clicked their fingers and popped in and out of existence. So consistency is the key when it comes to world building. So if you're going to be writing a more in-depth review, other than this is what I like, this is what I don't like, then it's a good idea to kind of make a list of things and check them off, like plot, pacing. Is the structure such that the challenges for the central characters increase as the time goes on, that kind of thing. Dialogue, characterization. If you make a little checklist, you can talk about each of those as you go through in your review. But the most important thing is plot. Now, that's what people want to know about. But that doesn't mean that your review is going to be just totally talking about the story, talking about the plot, because they can read about that in the blurb. Okay, what people want to know is, how is that plot handled? What is it about the way that the author has written that makes that interesting or not so interesting? What have they done skillfully? Now, the area in evaluating books that is problematic is the writing of prose. How do you evaluate what's good prose and what's not good prose if you don't know quite a bit about writing? And there's a lot of authors out there who unfortunately also don't know enough about writing to write good prose. So I think there is one thing that readers can tune into quite easily, and that is, do you get a sense from the writing that you are right there in the story, that you are the character and you're seeing the events take place around you? If the writing is like that, then it's good writing. If you feel like you're outside of the action and it's just the story's just being told to you, that's not such good writing. Okay, that's called telling. And what makes writing really good and really engaging is when it's shown. So it's more like you have the feeling it's like you're watching a movie, or better still, you're actually immersed in the movie. You're actually there experiencing it. That's what makes good writing. And watch out for one thing that is a real mark of a hack writer, and that's saying things like, leaping across the dog, she blew her nose, or dashing out the door, she picked up a suitcase. What's wrong with that? Well, you can't dash out the door and pick up a suitcase at the same time. You're either dashing or you're picking something up. So watch for sentences that start with words that end with ing. If there's a whole lot of them in the book, then please don't call it good writing, because it's not. It's really a mark of a hack writer. So I think whatever kind of review you're writing, whether it's a this is what I like, this is what I don't like about the story review, or if you're trying to write a review that has a bit more analysis of the actual story in terms of the craftsmanship, the important thing is that you do write a review. I know it takes time, and I know for me, I tend to write reviews when a book is really good or when a book is really bad, because those two extremes inspire me to write a review. But if you read a really good book, please do make the effort at least then to write a review, because it just helps everybody to recognize the really good books. Because let's face it, we need to recognize the really good books and celebrate them. So it doesn't matter whether your review is 1, 2 sentences, a paragraph, a couple of paragraphs, or a whole essay. The more reviews you write, the better your reviews will be. The more you will start to analyze the books that you read, and the more you will be able to respond to different things about the book that strike you, and the more you will be able to explain that to somebody else. So I hope that's helped you in your review writing, and I do hope that you might be interested in joining the AIA Publishing review team, because anyone in our review team can read our books for free as long as they write a review, or if they hated the book, then they can talk to me about it privately. So if you do want to join our review team, there's a link in the description that you can click to join up. And I hope that you will do that, because our authors work so hard on their books, and it's quite difficult for unknown indie authors to get reviews for their book. And they need reviews, because if readers come and find their books and there's no reviews there, then they kind of go, I don't know, nobody's reviewed it. Nobody's read it. It's like there's nothing to tell them whether the book's any good or not. So please come and join our review team. So that's it for me for today. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it around, and have a look at some of the other AIA publishing videos that are on our channel. Catch you next time. Bye.